The Defining Decade, Why Your Twenties Matter, and How to Make the Most of Them Now, by Meg Jay. Introduction. There's a feeling that every young person knows, a feeling of standing in the middle of a vast, calm ocean. You look to your left, there's nothing but water. You look to your right, nothing but an endless horizon. You could swim in any direction, but you can't see land on any side. So you don't know which way to go. And so, you tread water. You float. You tell yourself, I'm young. Life is long. There's time to kill today. This feeling of being adrift, of having infinite possibilities but no clear path, is the defining experience for so many people in their 20s. It's a feeling fueled by a powerful cultural message, a whisper that has become a shout. Don't worry. Your 20s don't really matter. 30 is the new 20. But what if that's not just wrong, but dangerously wrong? In her groundbreaking book, The Defining Decade, Clinical Psychologist Drive, Meg Jay pulls back the curtain on this cultural myth. Drawing from over a decade of work with hundreds of 20-something clients and students, she reveals a truth that is both startling and empowering. Far from being a throwaway decade, our 20s are the most critical, most transformative period of our adult lives. This isn't just a self-help book, it's a revelation. It combines cutting-edge brain science, hard-hitting sociology, and the deeply personal, poignant stories of people just like you and me. Drive. Jay shows us that the small, seemingly insignificant choices we make in our 20s, the jobs we take, the people we date, the way we think, are actually laying the tracks for the rest of our lives. And here's the promise of our journey today. By the end of this conversation, you will understand why the idea that you have all the time in the world might be the biggest obstacle to getting the life you actually want. You will discover the hidden power of your 20s and learn the practical, intentional steps you can take, right now, to stop treading water and start swimming confidently toward the shore of a life you've designed for yourself. Because the big moments of your life aren't waiting for you in some distant future. They're happening right now. Book summary. Let's begin with a young woman named Kate. When Drive. Jay first met her, Kate was 26, living at home with her parents and waiting tables. She was smart, a college graduate, but she felt completely paralyzed. Her parents, who had married young and felt they'd missed out on their youth, had encouraged her to take her time, to explore, to have fun. They didn't want her to make their mistakes. So Kate spent her early 20s trying to live out the life her parents wished they'd had. But instead of feeling free and adventurous, she mostly felt stressed and anxious. My 20s are paralyzing, she told Drive. Jay. No one told me it would be this hard. She filled her days with drama and distractions, and she tried to fill her therapy hours the same way, sharing stories about weekend hookups and friendship squabbles. When asked about her future, she'd echo the mantra of her generation. 30 is the new 20. She figured she had until 30 to get serious. This idea, that the 20s are a sort of extended adolescence, a developmental downtime before real life begins, is everywhere. We see it in movies, we hear it from friends, and sometimes, even from our own families. It sounds liberating. But Drive. Jay argues it's a trap. Because while our culture dismisses the 20s, our lives do not. About 80% of life's most defining moments take place by age 35. The first 10 years of a career have an exponential impact on how much we earn over a lifetime. More than half of us are married or are dating our future partner by 30. And our brains are capping off their final growth spurt, rewiring themselves for adulthood based on the experiences we're having, or not having. To put it simply, the 20s are not a dress rehearsal. They are the show. Drive. Jay refused to let Kate waste this critical time. She began interrupting the stories about the weekend to ask about the job search. She insisted Kate get her driver's license, something she'd put off for years, which limited her opportunities and made her feel like a passenger in her own life. She told Kate that while the examined life is important, the unlived life isn't worth examining. The future was in danger. One day, Kate came to her session in tears. She just had brunch with 4 friends from college. One was in town for a conference. Another had just returned from dissertation research in Greece. A third brought her fiancé. Sitting at that table, Kate looked around and felt a sudden, crushing sense of being behind. "I didn't have anything to show for myself," she wept. "No real resume. No relationship. I wish I'd been more intentional." That word, intentionally, is at the heart of this book. It's the antidote to the paralysis Kate felt. It's about understanding that your life isn't going to magically begin at 30. It has already begun. So, how do we become intentional? Drive. Jay introduces a powerful concept she calls identity capital. Identity capital is the collection of our personal assets. It's the currency we use to purchase jobs, relationships, and other things we want from life. It's our degrees, our work experiences, the skills we've learned, the way we speak, and even where we're from. It's the investments we make in ourselves, the things we do long enough or well enough that they become a part of who we are. Think of another one of Drive. Jay's clients, a young woman named Helen. At 27, Helen was having what she called an identity crisis. She was a talented photographer who had majored in art against her parents' wishes. After graduating, the unpredictable life of a freelancer proved too difficult, and she started nannying to pay the bills. Her friends, who were building careers, began to pity her. Helen felt stuck, waiting for a lightning bolt of intuition to tell her who she was supposed to be so she could finally start her life. She believed she was doing what she was supposed to do, having a crisis. But Drive. Jay explained that she was only telling half the story. The man who coined the term identity crisis, Erik Erikson, didn't just wander around Europe aimlessly in his 20s. Yes, he explored, but he also took jobs, studied new fields, made connections, and earned his psychoanalytic degree. Along the way, he was collecting identity capital. Helen was all crisis and no capital. She was pushing other people's babies around in strollers, a job that added nothing to her resume or her sense of self. It was what Drive. Jay calls an unthought known, a truth we sense but are afraid to acknowledge. Helen knew, deep down, that nannying was a dead end, but facing that reality was terrifying. Drive. Jay urged her to get a job that could go on her resume, to earn some capital. Soon after, Helen mentioned she had an interview for a floater position at a digital animation studio, but she wasn't planning on going. It sounded like just paying dues. She was thinking of taking a job at a coffee shop instead because it seemed cool and not corporate. This is a classic 20-something trap. We often choose underemployment, jobs we are overqualified for, because it feels less serious, less permanent. But Drive. Jay warns that these kinds of jobs can be incredibly damaging. The longer we are underemployed, the more we become different and damaged. Our motivation drops, depression can set in, and our dreams start to feel more and more distant as the world begins to treat us like the name tags we wear. The floater job, while it might have seemed like working in the mailroom, was overflowing with identity capital. It was a chance to learn about a new industry, to make connections, to invest in her dream. Helen took the advice, went to the interview, and got the job. 6 months later, she was promoted from floating to having her own desk. A visiting movie director noticed her talent and hired her as his cinematography assistant. She moved to Los Angeles, where she now works on movies. Helen's story reveals a profound truth. One good piece of capital is how you get to the next. better doesn't just come along. You have to build it, bit by bit. But how do you find these opportunities? How do you get that first piece of capital, especially when you feel like you don't know anyone? The answer lies in another one of drive. Jay's powerful concepts, the strength of weak ties. We've all heard of the urban tribe, that close-knit group of friends who feel like family in our 20s. They give us rides to the airport, bring us soup when we're sick, and listen to us vent over dinner. The urban tribe helps us survive. But drive, Jay argues, it does not help us thrive. Our close friends, our strong ties, are wonderful, but they are usually too similar to us. They know the same people, have the same information, and are often just as stuck as we are. The people who will truly and dramatically change our lives are our weak ties, the people we hardly know. These are the former professors, the old bosses, the friend of a friend, the neighbor you only say hello to. Weak ties are like bridges to new worlds. They know things and people that we don't. In a famous study, a sociologist found that over 3/4 of people found their jobs not through close friends, but through contacts they saw only occasionally or rarely. New information and new opportunities spread farther and faster through weak ties. Drive. Jay shares her own story of how this book came to be. A big box of books from a major publisher arrived at her house by mistake. She emailed the editor to let her know. They struck up a casual correspondence. Months later, that editor introduced her to the people who would eventually publish this very book. It happened because of a weak tie, a connection that was entirely random but utterly transformative. Take the story of Cole and Betsy. Cole was an engineering major who, after college, took a low-key job and spent his time drinking with his roommates, complaining about how much they all hated work. He was stuck in the echo chamber of his urban tribe. Betsy was an artist who was tired of dating unambitious guys but kept meeting the same type through her close circle of friends. One night, they both reluctantly went to a 30th birthday party for someone they barely knew. Cole's sister had dragged him there. Betsy had decided to say yes to an invitation she normally would have declined, just to meet new people. They met at that party, a place neither of them wanted to be, and it changed everything. Inspired by Betsy's drive, Cole remembered an old high school friend, a weak tie, who worked at a cool tech startup. He got in touch, his friend put in a good word, and Cole got a job that launched a successful career. Cole and Betsy are now married. Their lives were transformed by weak ties, the woman with the party invitation and the old friend from high school. Many of us hate the idea of networking. It feels phony. But reaching out to weak ties isn't about being slick, it's about being courageous enough to ask for help. And people, especially older, more successful people, often want to help. There's a helper's high that comes from being generous. The key is to be respectful and specific. Don't ask a weak tie to figure out your life for you. Do your research know what you need? An introduction, some advice, an informational interview, and then ask for it clearly. As Benjamin Franklin discovered, asking for a small favor can actually make someone like you more. Favors are how things begin. Of course, to do any of this, to build identity capital or reach out to weak ties, you first have to make a choice. You have to pick a direction and start swimming. And this brings us back to that feeling of being lost in the ocean. One of drive. Jay's clients, a young man named Ian, used this exact metaphor. He felt so overwhelmed by the idea that he could do anything that he was doing nothing. He was just treading water, waiting for a rescue boat. This is a defense against the terror of realizing that your life is up to you. It's a way of pretending that now doesn't matter. Drive. Jay told Ian they were getting out of the ocean and going shopping for jam instead. She was referring to a classic psychology experiment. In one setup, A store offered 24 different flavors of jam for tasting. In another, they offered only 6. The table with 24 flavors attracted more people, but almost no one bought anything. They were overwhelmed by choice. The table with 6 flavors had fewer visitors, but people who stopped there were 10 times more likely to actually buy a jar of jam. The myth of the 20-something years is that we are all standing in front of a 24-flavor table, that our possibilities are endless. But Drive Jay says this is a lie. None of us have 24 truly viable options. We have spent 2 decades shaping who we are. We have interests, strengths, weaknesses, experiences. We are all standing in front of our own personal 6-flavor table. The task is not to lament that we can't have all 24, it's to get to know our 6 flavors and make a choice. But what if we feel we should want something else? This is what Drive Jay calls the tyranny of the should. We see our friends on Facebook saving orphans or getting married, and we feel like our lives don't measure up. A client named Talia came to therapy feeling like an incredible failure. Her life didn't look grand. Her work didn't make people say wow. She was comparing her messy, real life to the curated highlight reels of her 900 Facebook friends. The tyranny of the should paralyzes us with the false choice between perfection and failure. It stops us from investing in what's right in front of us. Talia needed to get a job, even if it wasn't a wow job. She did, as a marketing analyst, and discovered a real talent for it. She learned that bigness comes not from some grand gesture, but from investing in what you have. She learned to stop worrying about how life was supposed to look and started living the life she had. This same principle applies to the other cornerstone of our humanness, love. Just as we tell ourselves we have all the time in the world for our careers, we do the same with relationships. We spend our 20s in low criteria or no criteria relationships, thinking we'll get serious later. But then, as Drive Jay says, the age 30 bait and switch happens. What was fine at 29 suddenly feels awful at 30. Panic sets in. We look around at the game of musical chairs, see our friends sitting down, and we grab the closest chair available, just so we aren't the only one left standing. A client confessed to Drive Jay, sometimes I think I married my husband just because he was the closest chair to me at 30. The best time to work on your marriage is before you have one. And that begins with a radical idea. You don't just pick your partner, you pick your family. Emma was a resilient young woman who had survived a traumatic childhood. Her father had died by suicide, and her mother was an alcoholic. She had fallen up, excelling in school and work, but inside she felt like the loneliest person in the world. She had kind friends, but at holidays, or in moments of true crisis, everyone went home to their families, and she was left alone. One day, she broke down sobbing in Drive Jay's office after buying a new address book. She had hundreds of contacts, but the in case of emergency line was blank. "Who's gonna help me if I get cancer?" she cried. Drive Jay told her, "We need to get you a new family." For the first time, Emma realized that through partnership, she had a second chance. She wasn't just choosing a boyfriend, she was choosing her future in-laws, her future children's grandparents. She broke up with her unambitious boyfriend and set her mind to finding a partner who could give her the warm, loving family she had never had. A few years later, she married a man whose family embraced her. Her in-laws bought an apartment in their town to be close to their future grandchildren. The emergency contact blank in her address book, she wrote, no longer seemed big enough. Being intentional about love also means being careful about how we build our relationships. Today, more than half of all marriages are preceded by living together. Most 20-somethings believe it's a good way to test a relationship and avoid divorce. But the research shows the exact opposite. Couples who live together before getting engaged are less satisfied with their marriages and more likely to divorce. This is called the cohabitation effect. Why? Because couples often slide into living together, rather than deciding. It's cheaper, it's more convenient, it just happens. The standards for a live-in partner are lower than for a spouse. But while sliding in is easy, sliding out is hard. This is a phenomenon called lock-in. The shared lease, the furniture, the dog, the mutual friends, these become what are called switching costs. Breaking up becomes so inconvenient that it's often easier to just stay together, and that inertia can slide a couple right into a marriage that neither person consciously chose. Being intentional means choosing a partner not based on convenience, but on compatibility and drive. Jay argues that the most important compatibility isn't about shared hobbies or political views. Those are deal breakers, not matchmakers. The real matchmaker is personality. She introduces the big 5 personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. While opposites might attract for a hookup, for a lifetime partnership, similarity is the essence of compatibility. The more alike two people's personalities are, the more they understand each other, the less friction there is. It's not about finding someone who is a perfect clone, but about understanding your own personality and seeking out someone you are in like with, not just in love with. Finally, underlying all of these choices about work and love is the physical reality of our own development, what's happening in our brains and our bodies. You may have heard of Phineas Gage, the 19th century railway worker who survived having a tamping iron shoot through his head. He lived, but he was no longer himself. He became impulsive, reckless, and unable to plan for the future. The accident destroyed his frontal lobe, the part of the brain right behind our foreheads that is responsible for reason, judgment, and forward thinking. Here's the stunning part. Modern brain scans show that the frontal lobe doesn't fully mature until our mid to late 20s. Our 20s are the time when our brain is capping off its second and final major growth spurt. It's a critical period where thousands of new neural connections are sprouting, wiring us for the rest of our lives. The jobs we take, the relationships we're in, the challenges we face, these experiences are physically shaping our brains. It's a use it or lose it moment. 20-somethings who engage with the world, who take on hard jobs and navigate complex relationships, are actively building more resilient, more capable, more forward-thinking brains. Those who hide out are letting that opportunity slip away. This is why facing challenges at work, even when it's terrifying, is so crucial. A client named Danielle landed a high-pressure job as an assistant to a major television news anchor. Her boss was demanding and often yelled at her. Every day felt like a crisis, and she constantly wanted to quit. But she stuck with it. Each time she got through a difficult day without quitting, each time she solved a problem under pressure, she was having what psychologists call a mastery experience. Real confidence isn't something you're born with. It doesn't come from the inside out. It comes from the outside in. It's built on these small, lived moments of success. It comes from action, from surviving failures, and from putting in the time. It takes about 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert at something. By staying in that difficult job, Danielle wasn't just earning a paycheck, she was earning confidence, hour by hour. And what's the result of all this work? Personality change. We often think our personality is fixed by childhood, but the research is clear. Our personalities change more during our 20s than at any other time in life. By investing in adulthood, getting jobs, forming stable relationships, setting goals, we become more confident, more responsible, more agreeable, and less anxious and angry. We literally grow into the people we want to be. Lastly, we must talk about the body. Specifically, fertility. It may seem like a topic for our 30s or 40s, but for 20-somethings, it's a critical piece of information for planning a life. While celebrity stories might make us think we can have babies at 47, the biological reality is unforgiving. Female fertility peaks in the late 20s and drops considerably at 35. By 40, it plummets. Drive. Jay isn't saying everyone needs to have children in their 20s. She is saying that 20-somethings who want to be parents deserve to know the facts, so they can make informed, intentional decisions about the timeline of their lives. This comes down to one final, simple action: do the math. A client named Rachel told Drive Jay she'd get serious about law school by 30 and wanted to have her first child by 35, with marriage somewhere in between. When Drive Jay laid it out on a timeline, Rachel realized her plan was impossible. She couldn't start law school at 30, get married, and have a baby all within 5 years without immense stress and compromise. Seeing it on paper brought the future closer. It made the present urgent. She enrolled in an LSAT prep course and started working at a law firm to get her reference letters. She got to work. That's the core message of the defining decade. The future isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create, decision by decision, day by day, in your 20s. Commentary. When you close a book like The Defining Decade, it's hard not to feel a jolt, a mixture of urgency and incredible optimism. The central idea, that our 20s are the foundation upon which we build the rest of our lives, is so simple and yet so profoundly countercultural. In a world that constantly tells young people to wait, to explore, to not rush things, Meg Jay's voice is a call to action. It's a call to take yourself and your life seriously. What I find most powerful about this book is that it is not a manual for a perfect life. It's a guide to an intentional one. It doesn't tell you what to choose, but it implores you to choose. It replaces the paralyzing fear of making the wrong choice with the empowering knowledge that not choosing is a choice in itself, and often, the one with the highest cost. The stories in this book are the heartbeat of its message. We see ourselves in Kate's anxiety, in Helen's identity crisis, in Ian's feeling of being adrift. Their struggles are our struggles. And their transformations show us what's possible. They show us that we are not defined by our pasts, but by the work we are willing to do in our present. So what can you do, today, after hearing these ideas? Let me offer 3 simple actions. First, identify one piece of identity capital you can acquire in the next 30 days. It doesn't have to be monumental. It could be finishing an online course, volunteering for a project at work that teaches you a new skill, or even just getting that driver's license you've been putting off. Do something that adds to your story, that becomes part of who you are. Second, reach out to one weak tie this week. Think of a former teacher you admired, a boss from a summer job, or a friend of your parents in a field you find interesting. Send a simple, respectful email. Ask for 15 minutes of their time for an informational interview. Don't ask for a job. Just ask for their story. You never know where that bridge might lead. And third, take 30 minutes and do the math for your own life. Get out a piece of paper and draw a timeline. Write down your current age. Then write down what you might want your life to look like at age 35. A family? A certain kind of career? Living in a particular city? Be honest with yourself. Then, work backward. What needs to happen between now and then for that to be possible? You don't have to have all the answers. The goal is simply to make the future feel real, to bring it closer so that your actions today have meaning and direction. That was a journey through the defining decade by Meg Jay. We've touched on the key landmarks today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a travel brochure. The real adventure happens when you take the trip yourself. The magic of this book is in the quiet moments, when a specific story or a single sentence resonates with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is meant to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about gaining information, it's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you see this critical, powerful, and defining decade of your life. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing and learning together.